Fellas, it has been a while since I've done a tier list. I think about 3 months now. I'm going to switch it up and give you a little bit more visual stuff on this one, but as always, this is best consumed on your second monitor while you're gaining XP on your account. Feel free to occasionally glance over and go, interesting. But as is tradition with these, let me know what you're doing in the comments so that I can be better informed on what I should talk about on this channel. Slayer has always been popular, so today I'm going to rank all these Slayer tasks. And as always with one of these videos, these are just my opinions. There is a very high chance you will feel differently about one or all of these placements. When I think about an ideal Slayer task, there are like a ton of things that come to mind. How much XP can I get? Is the task profitable? Is the monster aggressive? Can I cannon it? Can I barrage it? There are just so many different variables, and I will try to talk about each of them when they come into play. So yeah, let's just get into it and we'll start talking about it. Okay, the first one is Kurasks. Kurasks are weird. These are one of 2 monsters that you kill with leaf-bladed weapons. So these in Turoths can be killed with like a leaf-bladed sword or battle axe, broad bolts. I think you can use Slayer Dart. So your XP is typically lower than when you can use your best in slot gear, but I don't think it's too bad. I would guess these are like 15 to 20k Slayer XP an hour. They are aggressive, which is very nice. You can't cannon them because of their like weapon restrictions. But you no longer need to run all the way through the Slayer Cave. You can actually kill them in the Prifddinas Cave. And when you kill them in here, they'll drop crystal shards. It's not really a meaningful amount, but it is kind of a nice bonus when you're doing the task. And I'm pretty sure these are like one of the most profitable Slayer tasks. It's very weird. They drop like coconuts, white berries, big bones, and a ton of rune items. I don't think they're one of the better Slayer tasks, but they're not the worst. I would probably put Kurasks like pretty comfortably in C. This is a task that if I got it, I would do it because it doesn't take too long. I can AFK it pretty hard. The XP is okay and I'd make a decent amount of money. Yeah, I feel pretty confident in a C for Kurasks. I believe this would be Minions of Scarabas. I'm gonna be honest, I've skipped this task every time I've got it, and then I eventually blocked it. So I would probably put it in F, but because I don't really know too much about it, I'm gonna put it in our handy question mark tier. This is probably one that I would block regardless of who you are. I just don't think it's worth doing in the long run, but I personally don't know enough about it. Skeletal Wyverns. Now this one can go one of 2 ways. For some people, this will probably be one of their like favorite tasks because it is relatively easy. It's very AFK. It's pretty good money, but you do need pretty high stats to make it kind of efficient. There is a safe spot for these when you have them on task, so that makes it much better. Actually, I think there's one when you don't have it on task as well. But these are one of those creatures that I really don't think a Slayer task is that beneficial to you. If you wanted to kill them, you would just kill them. I think the Slayer XP rate is pretty low. I would guess it's like anywhere between like 7 and 15k. This is a task that I would do because the task is normally very small. So going to kill 15 wyverns is better than spending the points to skip, but I don't know how I would rank it. I would definitely put it below Kurasks. I think I'm gonna put it in D. You might have this higher in your list, but I'm not a huge fan of the wyverns. They just do the small task, get it done, and move on. Turoths. These are just like Kurasks where you can only kill them with leaf-bladed stuff, Slayer Dart, or broad bolts or arrows. They're an early Slayer task that you'd get kind of early. I don't think Duradel would assign these, so you probably haven't seen them very like frequently if you've been doing Slayer for a long time. I would guess the XP rate is probably like maybe 15 to 30k, somewhere in that range. These are one that I would probably skip most of the time. I don't think they're really worth doing, especially at a low combat and low Slayer level. Once you get into like the higher range, you don't get them anymore because they're not assigned by higher level Slayer masters. These ones are kind of whatever. I don't think they're the worst task ever, but they're definitely not the best. I'm gonna put it below Skeletal Wyverns for now, but it could move somewhere in the future. We'll see. Bloodvelds. Bloodvelds might be one of the best Slayer tasks in the game. There's so much variety with these. You can barrage them in the catacombs, you can cannon them in the Stronghold Cave next to Steve or Neve, and there's also the mutated variants in the Mire Ditch Laboratory that you can cannon, and it's multi. I think the drops are okay. I think you get a lot of blood runes, and I think you get a handful of like rune items. You get like rune medium helps from these guys. The XP, to my memory, is kind of low if you're using just like a melee setup, but if you're barraging or cannoning in Mireditch, I think it's like upwards of like 60 to 80k, somewhere in that range. It's one of the higher XP tasks for Slayer. It has a variety of different options. It's just a really good task. You should really do Bloodvelds whenever you get them. So I think this goes in S. Like, I think this is one of the better tasks in the game. Next, we have Dark Beasts. Let me go back quickly. One thing I didn't mention is that a lot of these monsters will have superior variants, so that also gives them a benefit. Bloodvelds have it, Kurasks have it. I think Turoths do, but let me double check. Yeah, Turoths do. They have a superior called a Spike Turoth. I've never seen one of those, but they do exist. Wyverns do not, and I'm pretty sure minions of Scarabas don't as well, but I'll mention the superior for the rest coming up in the list. Back to Dark Beasts. Starting, I'll just say it right up front, Dark Beasts do have a superior. It is one of the best drop rates for the superior uniques like the Enchanted or the Eternal Gem and the Imbued Heart. If you don't have this task extended, it's very much like Wyverns where you should do it because it's very fast. You can cannon these at both locations you can find them. I think the Dark Bow is kind of a good drop now, so it's a little bit of money if you get it. I think this is a good task to do, but I wouldn't say it's one of the better tasks overall. I think the XP is somewhere like maybe 35k an hour to like 40k, somewhere in that range. So I'm gonna put Dark Beasts in C, just above Kurasks. Yeah, I think that looks right. It could shift in the future, but for now that looks right. Avansies. Now this one is weird. The main reason you unlock Avansies as a Slayer task is to do Kriara. If you're not planning on doing Kriara, you should not have this task unlocked. The XP rate for just killing Avansies is absolutely terrible. It's probably like 5 to 10k. It's very, very slow. To do Kriara, you'll probably need like pretty high stats and good gear. So this is a much later game thing. So if you're someone who's like pet hunting, this task would go in S. But as like a general overall Slayer task, it's pretty abysmal. I wouldn't put it in F just because it does have a boss variant. So I'm gonna put it in D, above the Turoths probably. Just it gets this rating just because of the Kriara option. Don't do this task at regular Avansies, it's not worth it. Abyssal Demons. This is a really good task. When you get Abyssal Demons, you have a ton of options on how you want to do them. In the Catacombs, you can barrage, you can use the Venator Bow, you can just melee them down there if you really want. You can do Abyssal Sire, it has a boss option which gives it bonus points. It's decent money to just do this task based on just getting a whip drop. The only downside to it is that getting it can sometimes be like a very long task, and the waiting on getting these is very high. I'm personally a big fan of this task. I like doing it with the Venator Bow in the Catacombs. It's a good source for getting superiors, totem pieces, but I think even with like barraging, it's only like 50k XP an hour. So it is one of the better tasks, but I don't think it's the best task. I'm very torn if I want to put it in S or I want to put it in A. I think I'm going to put it in A for now, and maybe we'll shift it up to S once we get more tasks in. But myself personally, if I had a Venator Bow or Barrage, I would do this in the Catacombs every single time. But I can't really like, I'm like thinking about it. I'm like, should I put it in S? I don't know. I think it's good in A for now. We'll keep going. We'll come back to it. Fossil Island Wyverns. This task is okay, I guess. It's not terrible, but it's not really good either. I think I'd rank it like very similar to how regular Wyverns are. It's like low effort because they're aggressive, so you can just kind of walk in and just AFK them. If I got a small task, I would probably do them, but I think the XP is pretty bad. It's similar to regular Wyverns being like, it could be like as low as 8k all the way up to like maybe 15, maybe 20k an hour. They don't really drop anything that's worthwhile aside from the Visage, but you could also get Granite Boots and the Granite Longsword. I think I would block these if I had the points available and I didn't have a very specific block list, but I would probably put them alongside regular Wyverns, just maybe a little bit below it. I don't think it's that good of a task. Black Demons. Now this is one that I might have a different opinion on than most people. I think black demons are a good task for a variety of different reasons. If you kill regular black demons in the Taverley dungeon, you can just AFK. I think you can also kill them in the Chasm of Fire, which is another good spot. And I think the XP for this would be like 35 to 40k, somewhere in that range. The downside is that you kill them very slowly, so it is a very long task. Like, it can take a few hours sometimes. And the drops are pretty much non-existent. You just get like some random rune items that you can elk or sell in GE. But what kind of sets them apart from other demons is that with a black demon task, you can do demonic gorillas. Demonic gorillas are crazy profit just for these Zenites alone, but you kind of do have to get lucky to get a Zenite drop, so it's kind of hard to give them that as like a insane benefit. I haven't done a ton of demonics on my main account, but I think the XP rate is pretty low compared to the regular demons. I would guess it's like somewhere between 10 and 20k an hour. I think these are very similar to like Kurasks and Dark Beasts, where I would probably still do them instead of skipping them. But if I saw it pop up as my next task, I wouldn't be excited for it. I'd just be like, oh, okay, I guess I have to do this. I think just for the demonics, I'll probably put them in C above Dark Beasts. Yeah, that feels right to me. I've been sitting here thinking about it, but I probably just cut to this thought. So I think C is good for now. Dagganoths. These are a fantastic task. There's probably a lot of mixed opinions on this, but hopefully I can sell you on the Dagganoth task. This is probably the most versatile task in the entire game. You can cannon them in the lighthouse and get crazy XP. I think it's literally close to 90k an hour. It's disgusting. You can use the Venator bow in the catacombs and just completely AFK the entire task and still get pretty good XP, as well as totem pieces. You can also cannon them in the Stone Island. I don't remember the exact name for it. It's like Jurgamund Prison, something like that. Cannoning them there is not as good as it is in the lighthouse because it's not multi, but it is still like a viable option. And they have a boss variant being the Dagganoth Kings. I am a Dagganoth appreciator. Is that the right word? I'm a fan. I've done a lot of DKs, over 15,000 on the main account. The hard part with them is just getting in and kind of learning the rotation and cycle, but it got to the point where I was doing it on trackpad. It was that easy. I don't think it's the best task in the game, but it could be. That's the thing. I would say you should always do this task, so I'm going to put it in S. I'm going to put it above Bloodvelds because I'm a fan. It's a personal opinion. It's a list, but it is also somewhat objective. It's a very good task, and you should pretty much always do it. Greater Demons. These ones are probably more interesting than Black Demons because your boss variant is not Demonic Gorillas. It's actually Zambi Godwar's Dungeon. These are pretty chill if you just put down a cannon and just let it do the work. In the Chasm of Fire, I think the XP rate is like kind of middle of the pack. It's probably somewhere between 30 and 40k. In the Chasm of Fire, there's also a spot that I'm hopefully showing you right now where you can just range from a distance, so it feels like multi, but you do have to actively click. But this is a pretty good task, and it is one that I would do if it came up. I think a lot of people will block it because it does have a very high weighting, so you'll get it pretty often. But overall, I think Greater Demons is an okay task. It's one of those ones that it might pop up and you kind of groan about it, you really don't want to do it. But once you have like pretty high stats, good gear, it's one of those ones that you'll just be like, okay, I'll get it done so I can get another task, and I don't have to waste points. I can see a world where people put this in D, they really just don't want to do it, but for me, I think it goes above Black Demon, so I'm going to put it in B. Again, this could shift, but I think it's an okay task, and you should do it if it's not too much of a bother for you. Aberrant Spectres. These are... I don't know how I feel about these. I do these whenever I get them, but I feel like there's something I should either skip or block at this point. They do have a stronger variant, being the Abhorrent Spectre, I believe it's called. I hope that's not the superior version. Actually, I think they're called Deviant Spectres in the Catacombs. So these have two variations. They both have superiors. They're aggressive in both forms. They drop a ton of herbs, so bringing a herb sack when you do this task is very, very much advised. I think they also drop a ton of seeds, so if you're an Iron Man looking for seeds, this is definitely a task you want to do. I would guess the XP rate is somewhere in the ballpark of like 25 to 40k, somewhere in that range. It will very much depend on your gear and what you're using. A T-bow is surprisingly very, very overpowered at these. I say surprising, like it's not a T-bow, but you can cannon them in the Stronghold Cave. They drop totem pieces in the Catacombs, and they're the worst they've ever been in the Slayer Tower, so it's definitely not worth doing them there. I would say like these have some utility. You'd want to do them sometimes, but they're not like a standout task. I think they give me sort of C tier vibes. I'm going to put them below the Black Demons because I'd rather do a Demonic Gorilla task than I would do a Spectre task. But if you're an Iron Man, this probably goes up to A because of the seeds and herbs. It's definitely worth doing in that case. But for a main account like myself, I think sitting in C is acceptable. Adamant Dragons. As a Slayer task, absolutely awful. F tier, bottom of the barrel. The only saving grace for them is that when you get assigned them, they're typically like 6. You go and kill 6 of them and you're done. The XP is pretty bad. I did a full AFKing video on these and Rune Dragons, so maybe the thumbnail's on the screen. That's kind of nice. Ooh. But these are not like a super viable task. I don't really even look at them as a Slayer task. I look at them very similar to how I would look at Dark Beasts, where I can just go get it done really quick because it's only 6. The XP doesn't matter. It's just saving 30 points to get the task done. I would do these if they're in a small quantity, but if they were ever assigned to be like more than 10, I would probably skip them or block them. Oh, that's hard, man, because I put Dark Beasts on here for this exact reason. Dark Beasts are in C because they're a small task that can be done really quickly. They don't really have a valuable drop to them. I guess you could compare like the Dragon Limbs to the Dark Bow, but Dragon Limbs are so much more rare than the Dark Bow drop. They're actually probably very similar, being like 1 in 512 and 1 in 800 for the limbs. As a task, they're an F, but because they're a small quantity, not quality, I'm going to put them in D. I'm going to put it above Avansies because I would do this, but I wouldn't just do regular Avansies. It's just kind of a whatever task. I would do it just to get rid of it. No real thoughts in head empty. Ankous. Ankous are pretty good, actually. You can do these in a lot of different places. You can do them in the Stronghold of Security, like the place where you get the 10k. I would never do them down here. It's not worth it, but they are there. You can do them in the Stronghold Slayer Cave, which is the one in the Grand Tree. You could set up a cannon here and just kind of chill and get the task done. But I think the optimal location would be to do them in the Catacombs. You could barrage them here. You could use the Venator Bow, and they go down pretty quick when you have pretty high stats. The XP is fairly high. I would say it's above average. It's probably like 50k an hour. The tasks are never really that big. I think they fall somewhere in like the 80 range. So if I got assigned these, I would do them every single time. They're a very easy task, good XP. I think they're negative money if you're barraging or using a Venator Bow, but it's definitely worth it to do that. I really thought these had a superior, but they don't actually, which is really not a big deal. It doesn't make that much of a difference in my ranking for these, but I think these are like just an XP task, so I would definitely do them when they became available. I'll probably put them in B above the Greater Demon. I like that you can only see his pelvis. But yeah, this is a good task. You should do this whenever you can. Trolls. This is like one of my favorite pieces of advice that I ever give out. When you get a Trolls task, you should pretty much always do it on Yatizo. A lot of people don't even think about this. They just go to Death Plateau and kind of slog the task out, and it's awful. But cannoning ice trolls on Yatizo is very good. It's much better than the regular task. And I believe even when you cannon here, you'll still make money because of all the rune drops and the granite shields. The XP is also above average. I think it'd be like somewhere between like 45 and 60k. So if you ever get a trolls task, head over to Yatizo and try it out. Just make sure you bring the Fremnik shield because you do need it. Trolls, I think, are very similar to Ankous, where they're just an XP task. You'll kind of break even. There's nothing really super special about them. I do think it'd be cool to get a troll boss in the future so that we could use a Slayer helmet for it. But these are like one that I would definitely do. I don't think I would ever skip these. I would just go for the XP. And I think you can kill Dad in Nightmare Zone and the Ice Troll King. So you could do it in Nightmare Zone if you really wanted to. You just AFK the whole thing. So yeah, trolls, I think go in B for now. As long as you're doing them in Yatizo, they're not that bad. If they ever get a boss variant, they're going up a tier, maybe 2, we'll see. But they're really not that bad of a task. You just kind of, you got to do it once so you can see it, but Yatizo makes them way better. Trust me, you got to try it at least once. Black Dragons. This is a really good task. I know, I can hear you screaming, I don't want to kill black dragons. Trust me, bro, it's not that bad. There are so many options for this task that it makes it a good task to have, and you can even extend it to make it better. You can kill baby black dragons in Taverley Dungeon. You just go in, go up the little staircase. There's 2 right there. You can cannon them. The task is free. I think there's 1 spawn in the Myths Guild as well. If you go down into the basement and go to the right, there's 1 little dragon there, so you can hop worlds and get it done that way. You can kill brutal black dragons in the catacombs for totems and money. And of course, you can do everybody's favorite boss, the King Black Dragon. I think if you just want to get the task done, the baby black dragons is the way to go. I think that's still pretty good XP. I would guess it's like 25 to 35k, somewhere in that range. The King Black Dragon has a good chance at the Dragon Pickaxe, the Visage, the Pet, and yes, I'm going to call it a Visage, it sounds fancier. This is an okay task. Again, I would say it's not the best task in the game, but it is one that I would do every single time if I got it. I have these extended. I don't even kill KBD. I just go kill the baby black dragons. I think this one goes in B below the trolls, but it is a good task that I would do every time I got it. Blue dragons. What would I do for a blue dragon task? I think if I got a blue dragon task, I have 2 options. I would never do regular blue dragons. They're just so slow. But the baby variant in the Taverley Dungeon has a cannon spot that you can kind of just hang out and get the task done. Or I would go to Vorkath just for XP while farming the boss. I don't think doing Vorkath on task is actually better than doing it off task because of the Salve Amulet. But having that option just gives you Slayer XP while you make good money and try to get a pet. I think the task itself is just awful XP. It's probably like 15 to 20k, somewhere in that range. I would probably skip this task 90% of the time, but if I could be bothered, I would go just do the baby variant. I think this one for me goes in C, maybe high D. Not a great task. Brine Rats. When was the last time anybody actually killed a Brine Rat? I did a ton of these to get the Brine Saber. I went very, very dry. I did it all off task. I think these are kind of a whatever task. You can kill them pretty quickly, but the task is normally pretty big if I'm remembering that correctly. If I got them assigned, I would probably just cannon them. They're just kind of a whatever task. I don't think they're great. I don't think they're terrible. I would guess the Slayer XP is like 20 to 30k, somewhere in that range. They are completely AFK with a cannon. You'll lose a bunch of money. I think I'd put them alongside like Turoths. Like they're just kind of whatever. Like if you get them, you can do them, you can skip them. It's mostly just personal preference at this point. Yeah, I don't care for the Brine Rats, I'm sorry. Cave Horrors. Cave Horrors are a weird monster. If they didn't drop the Black Mask, I don't think anybody would ever kill them. They have pretty low HP, you can kill them very quickly. I think they drop a bunch of noted stuff as well, so you could make the money back if you decide to cannon. I think the XP is pretty low regardless of like what level you are. I think you would cap out at like 20k, so you'd probably expect like 10 to 20 depending on like what you're wearing. Me now, if I got these, I would probably do them just because they do have a superior variant, but I think overall they're just a pretty middle of the pack task. I'd probably put them alongside like Spectres and I'd do them sometimes if I felt like it. If not, I would just skip them. I'm gonna put it in C. Kraken. I can see a world where this is some people's favorite task because of how low effort it is. You just throw a fishing explosive at the boss and then you're good to go. I know it is profitable even if you're like blood barraging, which is crazy, but I don't think you would really actually want to do this task unless you really need an AFK task, or you're an Iron Man going for a trident, a tentacle, or I guess just anybody going for the pet. I think the boss is like 10 to 20k XP, and the smaller ones are very similar, but I think they're probably like 15 to 25k. It's kind of just a middle of the road task. I will give it a boost because it does have a boss variant. It has unique drops that are somewhat common and profitable. I'm gonna put it in C above the Black Demon. I can see a world where this goes like here, but I think for me personally, I put it here. I would still do it if I got it assigned. I have it blocked right now because I've completed the collection log for it and I just don't feel like AFKing for 4 hours. But yeah, I would do this task if you're not done the log or you need something from it, or you just want to AFK a Slayer task, but overall it's just a middle of a pack task. Drakes. I think these might be one of the worst Slayer tasks in the game. They can be like fully AFK if you're pretty high stats and you bring in anti-fire. They do have a superior variant, which has a pretty good drop rate at the Imbued Heart and the Enchanted Gem. I keep calling it the Enchanted Gem, it's the Eternal Gem. But I think if I ever got assigned these, I would skip them or block them. I think they have a pretty high weighting from both Duradel and Konar, so you'd probably get them more frequently than you want. The bones could be nice if you're like an Iron Man going for some prayer XP, but as a main account, I think you would bring the Bone Crusher and just get the small amount you would get from it. Oh, it's so hard. I want to put them in B because they do have like some redeeming qualities, but like this is a task I would almost never do. I can see like a world where I would do it if it was like a very small number, but I feel like they get assigned in like the hundreds most of the time. So my F tier gets its first thing with my first thing I would 100% block being Drakes. I hate this task. Dust Devils. This is probably one of the better tasks in the game, if not the best. In the Smoke Dungeon, there's now a multi-area, so you can barrage or use the Venator Bow down there, but I still think the best option for these is to kill them in the Catacombs, because you can get totem pieces, you can barrage, you can Venator Bow, whatever you want to do. It's like upwards of 80k, maybe even 90k if you're very efficient with it. They have a superior. I think this is a very good task. I still think Dagganoths is probably a little bit better than it actually, just because of all the stuff around Dagganoths, not just XP. But I would very strongly consider this to be a top task. If not, it could go on either side of the Dagganoths. I think I'm going to put it down here for now because there is one more task I know I want to put on this side. So I think I'm happy with that in top 3 for now. Elves. I would never do Elves. I would 100% block this if you haven't already. The only reason I would do this task is like if I had no Slayer points and I couldn't skip it, or I didn't have enough to block it. I would never do this task. I would do it even less often than I would do Drakes. So welcome to the F tier Elves. Bad task. Fire Giants. This is another one that I would probably skip or block. I do think you can get a pretty decent XP rate though, so that kind of gives them a little bonus. You don't really get anything unique from them. You could get a Rune Scimitar, but it's just like an elk. You can cannon them. You could kill them in the Giant's Den with a cannon, so you could cannon and get totem pieces. So that gives them another benefit. You can cannon them in the regular stronghold. You can kill them under the waterfall. I don't know. I think they're just kind of a whatever task. I would probably put them at the bottom of D, but I think this is a task I would do more often than I would do Avansies. Nah, it goes here. I would do a Kriara task over a Fire Giant task, so I'm going to put it here for now. I think this is a task you get a lot when you're relatively low Slayer level and it takes you a very long time. But at a higher Slayer level, I think you can get like 30 to 40k XP an hour, which is pretty good. The totems from the Giant's Den, as well as the AFK ability with the cannon, pushes them up a little bit for me. I still think they're just like such a long and boring task that like a small task from any of these guys puts these above this for now. This is just like, I don't want to do a Fire Giant task ever again. I said it. Gargoyles. Gargoyles are... yeah. Gargoyles have always been like really good money, so that puts them a little bit higher in my book. A lot of people just kill these off tasks because they're that good of money. They are aggressive too, so you can completely AFK them. They have a boss variant now, which is kind of a long and boring task, but there's a pet there, so that gives it some benefits, I guess. I don't think any of the drops from the boss are that crucial to any account. I guess the core could be good for the boots at some point, but that's such like a minor unlock that I don't think it's that much of a selling point. I do think the boss pet is one of the cooler pets in the game, like and it has 2 forms, which are both very nice. But as a Slayer task, it's like super middle of the pack. I think it's like 20 to 30k. It might actually be like 30 to 40k XP an hour. I would guess probably on the lower end, so probably like 25 to 35 is probably a better guesstimate. The ones in the Slayer Tower, there's always a ton of people unless you're on like a total level world. But this is one I would probably do, especially early on. And nowadays, I would probably never kill the regular ones. I would just go do some of the boss till I got bored and then finish the task at the regular ones. I think this, for me, sits somewhere similar to Kraken, where it's like, yeah, sure, I would do it, but it's not really like one I would get excited for if it got assigned. I think I'll put them above Kraken because they also have a superior variant, which is good XP. It has pretty decent drop rates at the uniques. It's not one of the best, but it's pretty high. It's overall just like a task you can do. It's not one to get excited about, but it's there. Grotesque Guardians are actually a very good boss for learning a lot of PvM mechanics. So if you're someone who's just kind of getting into bossing and whatever, I would definitely try out this boss. It will teach you a lot about like very standard mechanics like moving, prayer flicking, stuff like that. So as a learning tool, great. As a Slayer task, pretty middle of the pack, I would still do it. Hellhounds. Hellhounds are one of those weird creatures that have basically no drops. If you kill the regular ones, you'll pretty much just get ashes. There is a very rare chance you'll get a smoldering stone, but I would never expect to get one doing a regular Hellhounds task. I believe these are one of the higher weighted monsters, at least from Duradel, so you'll get them pretty frequently. And when they are assigned, they're assigned in pretty large quantities. You can cannon them in the Stronghold Slayer Cave, but you can also use the Venator Bow in the Catacombs of Karen, which is pretty nice. I think the regular ones give a pretty good XP, like 35 to 45k. And then you also have the option of doing Cerberus, which in itself is a pretty okay like boss monster for just for XP. I think it's like 20 to 30k XP an hour. The crystals are kind of rare, but if you do get one, that's like a 20 mil drop on a primordial. I think the eternal crystal is like close to 10 mil now because of the rebalancing that's coming. And the Pegasian is just a troll drop, but it does exist. I think Hellhounds are probably one of the better tasks to get. I would do these every time I got them, and I think I would only block them if I was completely done with Cerberus. But even then, I might still do the regular task because it's pretty good. I think these sit, for me, similar to Ankous, but a little bit better. So I'm going to put them in A. This might be controversial here, but I think Hellhounds are a pretty good task. Especially because a regular task you can just do by like setting up a cannon and praying protect from melee, and your task will finish itself. The XP is good. Good task. I approve the Hellhounds. Alright, I've kind of lumped the metal dragons together now, and I'm just going to go through them really quickly. Early on, iron dragons are the bane of any account. Doing a task there is absolutely awful. It takes forever. The drops are nothing. It's just really not worth doing if you're a lower combat level and like you're very early into your account. One of the recommendations I always make is that if you make a new account, don't do Dragon Slayer until you have a higher Slayer level and higher combat level. The upgrade of the Rune Plate is not worth getting these assigned as Slayer tasks, but once you get to a point where you have a Trident or you have a Dragon Hunter Lance, these tasks are pretty quick because they're assigned in small numbers, and that is pretty much the only reason I would do them. I think all three of these kind of sit very similarly. Iron Dragons are probably the easiest of all of them. I would assume all three are very similar XP rates. The Mithril Dragons are actually a pretty okay task if you have a Shadow. I guess all of them are okay if you have a Shadow, but by the time you have a Shadow, you probably don't want to do these tasks anyway. For me, they sit pretty comfortably all together in D. The Iron Dragons suck. The Steel Dragons suck. The Mithril Dragons, just because they have the ancient notes for collection log slots for that little dopamine hit and the chance of chewed bones to give you a dragon full helm, they can go just above the other two. They're all pretty bad, and I would probably do them depending on the quantity of the task, but most of the time I would probably just skip the task. It's really not worth doing. Next we have Kalphites. Kalphites are a great task. Kalphites can be done in like a bunch of different ways, but most of the time you'll be in the Kalphite Hive, or more specifically in the Kalphite Cave. The Hive is where you fight the boss, like it's that little maze you run through, and the Cave is the Slayer Cave right next to Shanty Pass, just to the right. In the Slayer Cave, we have this nice big open area that lets us kill the workers really quickly. This can be done to pretty much just skip the task. You'll complete it so quick, and the XP is pretty good, and there's relatively no risk. You can do it at any level. It's a very good task just to get done that way. The soldiers are also a good option. You can safe spot these and cannon them, and the XP from killing soldiers is actually one of the best in the game. It's close to 80k, I would say 70 to 80k an hour. You do have to spend the money on the cannonballs as there aren't really any drops from these guys, but it's pretty good, and it is something I would do if I was going for just solely XP. And outside of that, we have the Kalphite Queen, which is made substantially better by using a Slayer helmet. I think Kalphites have like a lot of variety. They're good XP. They can be done fast if that's something you want. As a Slayer task, this one goes upwards into the top. I think I put this one above Dust Devils, but below Dagganoths. This is a great task that you should do every single time you get it. Lizardmen. If you are someone who's hunting for a Dragon Warhammer for whatever reason, you should unlock this. But if you are not, you should not unlock this task. You can unlock it and do it on like the battlefront. I don't think that's the right name for it. I'll probably show you on the screen exactly where I'm talking about, because cannoning down here is actually pretty good XP. I would say the XP when cannoning is pretty high, like substantially higher than most like middle of the pack tasks. It's probably close to like 40k, but this will really depend on your stats. It can be done pretty quickly with a cannon, but you will have like a huge loss in GP. I'm like changing my own mind now. I think maybe this one is worth unlocking, but just know if you do unlock it, you will get it very frequently because it has a super high weighting. If you're an Iron Man going for a Dragon Warhammer, I would pretty much only do Lizardmen Shamans on task at that point until you get like super fed up and you're like, okay, I need it. I'm just going to camp the Shamans for 3 weeks. But if you are working towards maxing, unlocking these and going for a Dragon Warhammer along the way is a pretty good idea. For main accounts, I would just cannon them. I think this one is a lot of personal opinion. For me, right, I'm a big nerd. I'm doing collection log stuff right now. So I have these unlocked just for the Dragon Warhammer. But if I was maxing, I think that like XP per hour cannoning is pretty appealing to me. So I'm going to put these probably somewhere where most people are not going to expect because of everything I've just said. I'm going to put them in B below the Black Dragon. I can see a world where they go strongly down here, but I think the XP is worthwhile, and having that little benefit for the Dragon Warhammer hunt is good. Nechryals. This used to be my least favorite task. I would skip this every time I got it. I didn't really do any of these when I was going for 99 Slayer, but now doing post-max Slayer, I actually enjoy them a fair bit. I think these are one of the best XP tasks in the game when you're barraging. I believe you can get close to 100k an hour if you're like very, very efficient with it, but I think most people would probably expect somewhere closer to like 70 or 80k if you're barraging. The one downside is that when you do barrage them, you have to barrage them in the catacombs, and everybody has to barrage them in the catacombs, so it can be hard to find a world sometimes. I think picking up all the rune drops and seeds will basically get you net even when barraging. So you can get a ton of magic XP, a ton of Slayer XP for free. They do have a superior variant, which is one of the better ones for getting the Imbued Heart or the Eternal Gem. I think Nechryals are one of the best tasks in the game if you're barraging. I think even with melee, the XP rate is still pretty high. I'd guess it's like 50k an hour, which is substantially better than all the ones in S tier if you're meleeing. You can also cannon them in the Prifddinas Slayer dungeon, so that's another plus for them. I think Nechryals might be the best Slayer task in the game. So I'm going to just eat all my words and I'm going to put them at number 1. They are not my personal favorite task, but they are probably the best Slayer task in the game. Red Dragons. This is a weird one to have on here. I would probably ask you guys if any of you have ever done a Red Dragon Slayer task, and I would assume the answer is probably no. These have a weird niche use for Ultimate Iron Man where it's not really even an on-task thing. You just use the Forthos dungeon to use the bones on the altar, but overall I think they're a pretty mid-task. If you do get these assigned, I think the best option would be to go for the baby red dragons. You could find these in Brimhaven or probably more commonly in Forthos, which I just talked about. I think there's also 2 in the Mist Guild, so you can just rip through a baby dragon task, but I believe this one has to be unlocked by something, like you need to actually unlock the ability to get red dragons as a task. So my recommendation would be to never unlock them. So I will stick these in F because if you do have them unlocked, you should do the baby variant, but I don't think you should ever unlock them. There's not really any purpose. There's enough dragon tasks already. Just don't do them. Rune Dragons. These are the standout of all of the metal dragons. When they're not extended, the task is very quick, very similar to Adamant Dragons, but by using insulated boots, they're much more chill. The XP is pretty bad, but the profit is insane. Again, I did a full video on Rune and Adamant Dragons, so if this is a task you really want to do, you can see that video somewhere. I think this one is better than the other dragons I've listed, but I don't think it's a great task overall. It's probably like 10 to 15k Slayer XP an hour. But if you are a collection log doer like I am, I have these extended just so I can go for the unique drop, and the money is just it's unreal. It's very, very good for very minimal effort. I wouldn't say these are one of the better tasks, but it's definitely not one of the worst tasks. It has a lot of things going for it, mainly just how small the tasks are and how quick you can get it done. I think these for me, sit pretty comfortably in the C tier above Blue Dragons, but I can't really put it any higher. It's not one of those tasks that you really want to get, but you'll do it if it does get assigned. Smoke Devils. Smoke Devils, I think, are very similar to Nechryals. I might actually have to look this up to see which one is the better XP task. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't see these on the list, and I think they might be above Nechryals for XP, so give me 1 second here, it'll be instant for you. So, Smoke Devils, very, very good. Smoke Devils are by far the best XP task in the game. Barraging them gives you 150,000 Slayer XP an hour. That is substantially better than Nechryals, but there is some tech to this that is a little bit more than Nechryals. With Nechryals, you just do that little fun run back and forth to stack them all up, or you use 2 dancers to basically stack them for you. With Smoke Devils, you need a little bit more tech. You need to lure them behind a wall before you can do it. But with Smoke Devils, you can cannon them while you barrage them, which is like the trifecta, or is it a dufecta of XP? These are crazy. Like that 150k Slayer XP is insane. I remember doing 99 Slayer like back when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, and getting like 30 or 40k XP an hour was considered like top tier. So getting more than 3 times that nowadays seems kind of insane. Smoke Devils also have a superior variant and a boss variant. The regular ones drop the occult necklace, which is the best magic item in the game, at least right now. They are talking about rebalancing it, so it won't be forever, but as of right now, it is the best magic item in the game. And when you barrage them and cannon them, the drops still cover the cost of everything. So you can get a ton of magic XP and a ton of Slayer XP for free. There's a boss, there's a superior, and I believe the superior is probably number 2 for the most common thing that drops the imbued heart or the eternal gem. This might be the best task in the game. I think I've been converted. I'm going to throw these Smoke Devils at number 1. They have dethroned the Nechryal as the best Slayer task in the game. They do have a super high requirement of 93 Slayer, so not everybody will have them unlocked, but when you do, you should definitely be doing them every single time you get them. Spiritual Creatures. These suck. I hate these. I don't see a world where anybody does these as a Slayer task unless they're like completely strapped for points. The only time you really kill them is if you're an Iron Man going for Dragon Boots, or you're trying to get kill count to enter Saradomin, because with Zami you would kill the Imps instead, with Kriara you would kill Avansies, or you would use a Ecumenical Key, and with Bandos you would kill the Goblins. I guess for Nex you would kill the Spiritual Mages, and I did just have to confirm, but they are actually Spiritual Mages. For some reason I thought they were called Ancient Mages for Nex, but these would be Spiritual Creatures. But if you're doing a Slayer task, you wouldn't be going for kill count to get into Nex anyway. So these are another one that I would strongly just recommend you put on your block list. It's really not worth killing them at all, ever, outside of being an Iron Man going for Dragon Boots, but I wouldn't do that on Slayer task anyway. They're very similar to Elves in my opinion. I would just block them. They're not worth doing. Suqahs. This is a weird one. These guys serve almost no purpose. I think you have to kill one for a quest to make a potion, but outside of that, they're pretty much exclusively a Slayer task. You kill them on Lunar Island and you can cannon them, but most people don't know this. The XP from these guys is definitely above average. You're looking at like 50 to 60k Slayer XP an hour, which is really good, and it's very minimal effort. It's a fast task with the cannon. You just AFK with auto retaliate and you're pretty much good to go. This is a pretty good task that, I'm gonna be honest, I do this every time I get it assigned. They're never a super high quantity. I believe it's like somewhere between 60 and 90. So doing them is good XP and it gets done pretty quickly. I think for me, these sit very similar to Lizardmen. Like if you get them assigned, you should do them because the XP is very good and it can be done really, really quick. For me, Suqahs go into the B tier above Lizardmen. Wyrms. These are new. Well, kind of new. The drops are nothing special. You can get a Dragon Harpoon here, which I believe is like the main reason anyone would want to kill these at any point in time. I think the XP is like whatever, they're 30k-ish, somewhere around there. They are not aggressive, so you need to click on them every single time. They do have a superior, which is okay. It's probably closer to the top than it is to the bottom, but it's not near the top for the uniques. I hope that made sense. It made sense in my head. They're just kind of whatever. I think they're probably worth doing for at least a little bit, but I would probably just skip these whenever I got them. I really wouldn't block them. My only hope would be that I don't block them in case I'm skipping tasks and they get assigned as that last task where I can't skip anymore. They would be something I would do in that case, but most of the time I think I would just skip this task. So for me, they kind of sit pretty similar to Wyverns. They get knocked down because you do get a large quantity of them. I'd still probably put them above Metal Dragons, but I'd put them below Wyverns just because of the time required. They're like a below average task and probably not worth doing after you get that Dragon Harpoon on an Iron Man. Yeah, just kind of whatever. And the last one we have here is the Zygomites. These are probably the weirdest task in the game. You have to use fungicide when you pick them. These are ones I would probably do every single time because the quantity is so low. I think like the highest amount is like 35. So their benefit is that they're done quickly for free points, but they're pretty shit XP. I think they're legitimately like 5k an hour, which is awful. So I think for me, they sit kind of similar to Brine Rats. I'd probably do them over Brine Rats most of the time, and I'd probably do them over Turoths most of the time. So I'll put them here and I'll move the Turoth down. Yeah, that makes sense to me, but let me take a look at this and see if I want to rearrange anything. I moved very few. I moved the Ankous up because it is a good XP task. It's super quick. I would do this task 100% of the time. Does it compete with these two? Not really. There's an argument you could put these up here, but I think the distribution kind of makes more sense. When you look at this, kind of look at it as like, this is like number 6 and this is number 7. It's not like there's a huge leap from here to here. It's just distribution. And if you want like a more precise breakdown, S tier, I would say when these get assigned, I'm excited, I'm happy, I'm very open to doing all of these tasks. When A gets assigned, I'm like, this is a good task that I want to do. I'm not jumping for joy when I get it, but it's one that I want to get. When B gets assigned, I know it's a task that I should do because it's really good XP and it's worthwhile. When C gets assigned, I know this is a task that should be done. I don't necessarily want to do it, but I will do it. And when D gets assigned, I'm thinking, should I skip this right now? Is it worth doing, or do I just stick it out and get it done? And F is stuff that I would 100% block. I would never do any of these tasks, except for some very rare scenarios where I'm completely out of Slayer points. And that is my Slayer tier list. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know. I feel like there's some tasks missing out on here. Let me pull up the Slayer task list and see if there's any like big ones that I missed. Okay, there's only 2 that I think are truly missing from this, and the first one is Basilisks. I don't have a little image, but I'll put one on screen when I place it. Basilisk task is awful. The regular ones suck, especially at a low level. It's not really worth doing, but you kind of have to when you're at those early Slayer levels. When you get a little bit farther into your account, you unlock Basilisk Knights, which are definitely not worth doing. The only time you really want to kill a Basilisk Knight is if you're going for the jaw on your Iron Man, and you should do those on task, but once you get that jaw, remove the ability to unlock Basilisk. It is not worth it. Those are a very like low rate, being like, again, similar to like the Zygomites that we talked about last. They're like legitimately 5 to 10k XP an hour. It's terrible. I would put those in D, just above the Zygomites, because they are a little bit more profit, but they are a pretty bad task that I would never do if I wasn't going for the collection log or the face mask unlock. And the other task is actually Jad. So you can unlock Hot Stuff, which gives you the ability to get a Tazar task. When you get this task, you can pick between Tazar or Jad. If you complete a Jad Slayer task, you get 25,000 Slayer XP, which is massive. And the Tazar themselves are not a terrible option if you have Barrage unlocked. If you do get this task, I would always recommend you pick Jad. Doing Jad on task is like the best option. Doing Jad on task is just so much better. Your accuracy is increased against all the monsters in the fight cave, and your pet chance is greatly increased when doing this on task. If you are someone who is not really done the fight caves, or if you think you can't really do a fire cape, I would say don't unlock Hot Stuff. But if you are someone who's been playing for a long time and you're very comfortable doing the fight caves, this is an S tier Slayer task. I know a lot of hardcore Iron Men who are playing for ranks will unlock this, because dying in the fight caves is a safe death unless you're on a group hardcore. So there's no risk, and it's one of the best Slayer XP tasks in the game. It's not near the top, but I would be very competitive with something like Abyssal Demons. Plus, you can also unlock this so that when you get it assigned as a task, you can enter the fight caves and leave the fight caves, and it will skip your task for free. And on top of all that, for the very small portion of people who have watched the video all the way through, and the even smaller portion of that who have completed the Inferno, if you've completed the Inferno, you can now get assigned Zuck as a Slayer task. This makes the Inferno slightly faster. Even though it will still be extremely difficult, it is worth doing if you're someone who can do the Inferno. And now that I've completed talking about Jad, I would put it in S tier. It is an elite Slayer task that I would do every single time it was assigned. There is one more that is missing, Hydras. Hydras are a terrible Slayer task. I hate it as a Slayer task. I think it would be very similar to how people would look at Gargoyles. The boss itself is incredible GP. It is fantastic, but it is a very long task that can sometimes take like upwards of 6 hours. It's kind of disgusting. I think overall Hydras are probably worth doing, so I'd probably put them at the top of C. I actually have a Hydra task right now, so hopefully you're seeing that on screen. I'm going for the Grandmaster time for no good reason. It's RNG and it's driving me crazy. But now that is actually my Slayer tier list. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments. Let me know what you would change. Thank you so much for watching the whole video. It means a lot. I hope you got a lot of scaping done. Hope you gained a lot of XP. Thank you to the big fellas, Dan Smaghead and Loki FM, as well as the fellas Snacks, Jujo, iTalk, and Halal Platter. I appreciate you guys for your continued support. Happy New Year. I got a fishing episode of AFKing 9 to 5 coming out in the next couple days. But until then, I've really got nothing left to say, so I'll see you in the next one.